belonging to multiple social groups at the same time, because it can also be overlapping, because diversity can be overlapping. And we have to also know that all the time diversity is not the visible differences only. They can also be non-visible or invisible differences also. So whatever the what categories that I have shown you, apart from that, there can also be differences in learning styles, personality of the students, mental health, and there can also be more often present without being visible. We cannot see like what is the learning style of the students. We cannot see the personality of the student. When I'm talking about personality, I'm not talking about physical personality of the individual. I'm talking about the mental personality of the individual. Okay. So there can be differences. So mental personality, we are talking about probably the level of adjustment, creativity, intelligence, problem solving ability. There can also be individuals values, the individuals abilities, the individuals learning style. And most probably, as teachers, we all know that there can also be how there are differences in teaching. All teachers are not same in their effectiveness, and at the same time the teaching styles differ. In the same manner, even the learning style of the students also differ. We have the different styles of learning, like auditory, or maybe visual, or maybe kinesthetic. So some students like to learn by hearing. Maybe it is a lecture method, or maybe stories, or it may be even audio, or maybe radio. There can be students who love to hear stories, love to just hear orally somebody is speaking, or just learn by hearing. There are some students who cannot learn just by hearing. Sometimes the students, because when we were talking about the introduction of radio programs is not very well advocated for a primary level, or maybe for a lower primary level. In the absence of any physical stimuli, it cannot hold the attention of very small children, and they cannot listen to just either a radio or to a tape recorder, or even to hearing a teacher maybe for a long time, right? So there has to be some sort of kinesthetic style. Kinesthetic in the sense, sometimes some learners like to learn by doing it. You must have seen, doing in the sense, maybe at a lower level, we will have physical activities for the children, sports, we will have different types of under learning style. We may also feel that some students like to learn only by doing. So we must have seen, you must have seen that at primary level, maybe by making a student to a rhythm, making them to dance, the teachers will make them to learn a poem, and they'll make them to act, right? Make them to play. There'll be games and all that. Maybe at a higher level, there may be problem solving, there may be some sort of experimentations, there may be some sort of field work, there may be some sort of so activities where there is a physical involvement. So that type of learning where students learn by doing themselves, by involving themselves physically, that's called as, they learn by doing it, that's called as kinesthetic style. Some students love to see things and learn. So that is the reason we have so many teaching aids, whether they are maybe two-dimensional aids or three-dimensional aids. There may be charts, pictures, photographs, globes, specimens, right? And apart from that, there are also like field-based experiences where the students can go and observe, maybe watch, maybe certain things, maybe physically. It's both kinesthetic as well as visual. It's combined, and they can also hear like what is happening. It's all the three styles are combined there. They will listen to people, they'll watch it, they'll see it, and they involve in doing it, right? And there can also be TV programs, there can also be films, there can also be movies. That is a visual style. Some children like to see and learn, some children like to hear and learn, some children like to do and learn. And there can also be a combination of hearing and seeing, or hearing and doing, or seeing and doing. So the combination of these styles, teaching styles, will allow the students to have their learning styles and they learn the material. So in an academic, maybe in an educational setup in a classroom, there can also be differences in the learning styles of the students, where there are audio learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners. There is also the differences in the personality, maybe the cooperation, level of tolerance, maybe intelligence, maybe creativity, or maybe level of comprehension, maybe attention, maybe adjustment. There can be hundreds of traits. We can just say when it comes to personality, there can also be differences in the mental health of the students also, and they can also, all these things we cannot visually, we cannot directly observe them, we cannot directly see them, but still all these differences exist with the learners, and that without being visible, they are very, very strong. The learning style or personality of the individual, or maybe these characteristics, apart from the visual traits, the visual, there are certain things which we can see, and there are invisible things that we cannot see directly. All these are to be taken into consideration when we are talking about diversity in the classroom. And now, when we talk about so much of diversity, learner diversity, as well as the students who come with different unique backgrounds, they comprise a group of students, and that becomes a class. When there is a learner diversity in the classroom, how should be a teacher, and what should be the teacher competencies? How should we teach all these children together? And when we can teach all these children together, right, which will help all children to learn more or less at the same time, which can cater to their learning styles as well as to their needs. And that type of teaching, we call it as inclusive teaching. And for a inclusive teaching, so teacher should develop certain competencies, whether it is through, there may be certain inborn abilities of a teacher, right? There can also be acquired competencies through training, through orientation programs, faculty development programs, through workshops, right? Through listening, through reading, right? So these competencies need to be developed in order to handle the inclusive classrooms and to do the inclusive teaching. So, teachers are required to demonstrate diversity competencies that demonstrate our awareness, understanding, and appreciation for the differences. So, what competencies are required for the teacher is that the teacher should become aware about the diversity. The teacher should become aware about the differences. And the teacher should develop understanding. So, this awareness competency is very important. What is awareness? One should know that there is a diversity and each student is different, and the students backgrounds are unique, and there are different types of backgrounds, whether just now we were speaking ethnicity, race, gender, right, socioeconomic status, or apart from that, learning styles, personality, mental health. There are so many types of differences. The teacher should become aware about that, and that competency is required. That what are the different types of differences that a student can come with. Apart from that, one should have a understanding and why these differences, what make an individual unique, and why we call them as unique, right? And after understanding why these differences, a teacher should learn to appreciate in the sense, just now I was talking to you, that diversity should be celebrated, diversity should be taken as a valuable resource, not as a problem. When a teacher takes diversity as a valuable resource, right, and again should understand that differences need to be taken care of, differences need to be acknowledged, that is called as appreciation. And these competencies the teacher should have. Apart from, the teacher should have the ability and knowledge that would enable a teacher to excel academically. Apart from that, the teacher should have the abilities to handle different types of students, and also should have a subject knowledge where the teacher can have the teaching material, learning material as per the needs of the children, right? And so that all children irrespective of their background, irrespective of the diversity. Every child is given an opportunity to learn. For that, the teacher should possess proper management abilities, assessment abilities, observation abilities, right? Sensitivity, as well as the knowledge about the differences, as well as the subject matter, which should be given to different types of students. So only then a teacher can excel academically, can think of inclusive teaching. And these competencies are skills and the knowledge that enable a teacher to be successful. Only just like the students are different, even teachers are also different. But a teacher need to develop these skills, need to have the knowledge. Only then that if you have a different set of skills as competencies as well as knowledge, only that would enable a teacher to be successful. That is to reach out to all the students. So to maximize the students' learning, teachers must have expertise in a wide ranging array of competencies in an especially complex environment where hundreds of critical decisions are required each day. So every day there are hundreds of critical decisions. In the sense, may not be it is time consuming, it may become very monotonous, but still the teacher should learn how to handle these like whatever the incoming, or maybe each day whatever the type of the teacher encounters the different difficulties, the teacher should know how to solve them, especially in a very very complex environment. And the teacher should have that wide ranging array of competencies, maybe understanding the students values, the attitudes, understanding students problems, understanding students level of comprehension, students level of maybe the time which is required for learning. See, all these things need a set of skills that we call as competencies for the teachers to be successful. So teaching to engage diversity, to include all learners, and to seek equity is essential for preparing civically engaged adults and for creating a campus and society that recognizes the contributions of all people. That is what I was telling. If the girls are left out, or disabled are left out, or socioeconomically disadvantaged are left out, or maybe economically left out, or some religious minority is left out, or maybe with students with certain special needs are left out, we cannot have a civilized society. It is not called as a civilized society until and unless it is a socially just society where it provides equal opportunity for all the people to contribute, and one where we can have uh, very civically engaged adults. That means what we is talking about civically engaged adults. I'm talking about adults with those competencies, with those values which are socially desirable. Nowadays, we are seeing so many adults who are derailed, so many adults are maybe the teenagers who are being brainstormed, and teenagers are maybe the adults who are put into the wrong path, and without proper understanding or without proper awareness. So we should have socially, as well as like what we call it as civilized engaged students who can contribute to the society, and that can make a harmonious society. So we need to create a very very harmonious society, as well as that would lead to a very very developed nation, or a very highly civilized or a knowledgeable nation, or a knowledgeable country which NEP is thriving to achieve. So teaching for diversity refers to acknowledging a range of differences in the classroom, which we have already discussed at length. And teaching for inclusion signifies embracing the differences. Just now I said teacher should possess a set of skills, right, in order to handle children coming from diverse backgrounds, or each child is a unique one, and should have the knowledge, awareness, understanding, and sensitivity or appreciation towards these differences, which we call it as competencies. So teaching for equity allows the differences to transform the way we think, teach, learn, and act, such that all experiences and ways of being are handled with fairness, and justice. As I was talking to you when we were talking about educational equity, equity is something wherein we provide what is required for each individual. To give a very, very simple example, sometimes if there are a group of people who are very, very hungry, there are, if there are very, very young children, very, very old people, if there are adults, if they are very youngsters and all that, if you are distributing a bread, uh, probably if you are distributing uh, just two breads to each one, to show equality, that would definitely hamper equity. Maybe
Okay.
probably a 1 year or a 2 year child may not be able to eat probably two breads or whatever it is. Maybe a youth may require instead of two, maybe three, so that he is not hungry. Or maybe a old person may require only two, or maybe somebody require four, somebody may require only two, somebody may require only one, somebody may require half. So the ultimate goal is to see that everybody is fed fully, whether they eat half, whether they eat full bread, whether they eat two breads, whether they eat four breads, whether they eat three breads. So if everyone is fed fully, so each one will take what is required for him in order to be satisfied, to fill his stomach, right? So that is called equity. That is called equity. If you are distributing equally, for one it may be more, for one it may be very less, for one it may be okay. So that is not equity. That is, equality does not help in equity. Equity can at maybe later stage can help in equality. So here we need to enhance the educational opportunities for all the students simultaneously, so that they engage by providing the required resources and facilities. As I was giving you the example, if there are students who are hearing impaired, who are having a visual, physical disability, who are visually impaired, right? And normal children, if there are gifted children, so all types of probably the equipments or assistive technology required for these children to learn should be provided to them. Okay. So that is called as equity, so that everyone learns. So these things are very important when we want to talk about the inclusiveness. When we are talking about success, these three things are very important. We need to see that all students are actively participating, and there has to be active practice teaching. You need to have active practice teaching for diversity, in the sense when you are teaching, teacher should see that you use different teaching methods, so that you cater to the needs of, you use both all auditory materials, visual materials, kinesthetic, that is activity. So different types of teaching methods need to be used, so that you cater to diversity. And then provide equity, that means provide essential material or services required for the student, and that definitely helps in inclusion. So difference in an essential part of our history and current reality. And this you forget about America, even if you where there is racism. When it comes to India, we talk about maybe we have a caste strata. Now, not much about racism, but we have religious plurality, language plurality, geographical differences, language differences, right? These type of things are there. And if at all, if you want to see that everybody is having a different status, you need to have, you need to deal with all these people, so that there is a individual freedom and there is also a common good. And difference is also is an unstoppable part of our future. So classrooms are increasingly diverse, and demography assures that this trend will continue. And we know that in 21st century, the whole world is become a global village, and people are moving across the world, whether it is for education, whether it is for work, whether it is for job, or for whatever it is. And now we need to become multiculturally sensitive. You must have seen in your own families, people before they go to a country, they try to find out what type of people attitude is there, their food is there, culture is there, language they speak, what type of attitude, whether they are hostile, whether they are very cooperative, whether you will be secure or not. You try to learn about the demography of the people or about the country. So in our classroom, we should make children who are culturally sensitive, and they should become multicultural. So that particular skill is very, very important. So that can happen only when there is a diversity in the classroom, and they learn it by experience. The way that you treat, the way that you act, that the way that you are taught. So that is very, very important. So diversity and inclusion improve teaching and learning. So when there is a diversity, you need to have multiple ways of learning as well as multiple ways of teaching, and that leads to inclusion. So people learn and enrich their abilities to think critically and creatively as they engage in conversations across difference, especially when all learner abilities and attributes are and embraced. So when you have people coming from different ethnicity, religion, language, or whatever it is, so as I was speaking to you maybe some time back, and I said, when there are different viewpoints, you learn to see the other's point of view, you learn to analyze, you learn to think critically, and you learn to synthesize, and then you become more and more creative, right? So that is very, very important, and that the learners would develop this type of abilities. And apart from that, inclusive teaching strategies are intended to ensure that all students feel supported such that they freely learn and explore new ideas, feel safe to express their views in a civil manner, and respected as individuals and members of group. Intentionally incorporating inclusive teaching strategies helps students view themselves as people who belong to the community of learners in a classroom, and maybe even in a higher education, that is university or colleges. Here what happens, the student should feel very safe and secure. Sometimes if somebody expresses his views, he should not be looked down upon. So one should try to hear the other's point of view, and in a very, very civilized manner. And each individual should be respected as a member of a group, and their viewpoints need to be heard, need to be analyzed, need to be discussed, and maybe you need to come to a conclusion, need to take a decision and solve the problems. That would help a community of learners, and that way you are going to create not only the teachers through their teaching, by creating the safe environment, allowing a students to freely express one's views and ideas, and see that no student is being insulted or looked down upon, or intentionally doing something. This creates an inclusive classroom as well as an inclusive society. Excuse me. Sorry. So the most important thing that anyone can help educate the student is to learn as much about them as possible. If at all, if you want to have an inclusive classroom setup, see, it is not just merely teaching. The classroom environment should also be inclusive, where each child feels secure. And I do not know whether you have come across any such experiences when right to education was introduced, when the schools were asked, especially the private schools were asked to give 25 percentage of 25% of admissions to the children belonging to the neighborhood, especially who belong to socio-economically disadvantaged groups. And there were certain researches and observations which are being made, and neither the parents were willing to mix their children with such type of socio-economically disadvantaged group of children, nor the managements and teachers were also willing to mix up the children. They were made to sit separately, maybe in the separate two benches, maybe at the back of the class or whatever it is. So what happens, that develops it. See, there are pros and cons. I don't say that suddenly that you can create such type of inclusive classrooms. So those children, some parents, they said that even our children will learn bad language or habits or behavior. And if there are only 25% of the children who are coming from socioeconomically disadvantaged group, and 75% of the children who are from a better off and advantaged group, why not the other 25% students learn the civilized ways, manners, right, language and everything? It all left to the teacher, how you create that type of environment, manage a classroom, make the students feel secure, and make other children, because at a lower level or at a primary or maybe even at a secondary level, it is how you manage a class and how you treat the children and how you speak about the other group, right? How you speak about the maybe other language, other religion and other culture, other ethnicity, other socioeconomic status, that makes a lot of difference, and that would impact the children. So if at all, if you want to have a inclusive society, how you manage the class, that is classroom management, treatment towards the children. In case if there are discriminative treatments, then does not help in a, that in case if there is a discriminative treatment, it develops insecurities in certain children, and that impacts his academic success. It impacts his intellectual development, his social development, his moral development. Okay. So the classroom teacher's role is very, very important. How you manage, how you assess learners, how you treat children, how you that means non-discriminative behavior. And many a times it is not just merely the teaching methods. The teacher's personality, the teacher's treatment also makes a lot of difference in creating a inclusive classroom setup or maybe an inclusive environment. So these are the various ways, variety of ways that the student, the teacher should use. Maybe the teacher should spend time talking to students and asking them to speak about their backgrounds, to speak about their fears, speak about their experiences, to speak, to bring the case studies, to bring the successful stories, and should celebrate each and every child's small successes in the classrooms, right? And engage them in activities that reveal information about them, and make students feel that they are capable of doing something only if they are engaged in activities, are allowed to do something. Maybe some student is very good in telling stories, some student very good in singing, some student is very good in drawing, somebody in sports, somebody in doing math, somebody in language, somebody in writing poems. So there may be multiple number of potentiality that the students they come with, and the teacher should see that these potentialities informations are revealed in various ways, and that will make the other children respect each other based on their potentialities. That is very important for creating a very inclusive classroom atmosphere or environment. Once the teachers have gathered the information, whatever is required regarding the students, then they should start. They should tailor the activities lessons to students' needs and abilities. And here, and one should see that whenever they are preparing the materials, when they are preparing the classroom lessons, when they are preparing the activities, they should see that all the children who have different needs, they all will be involved in one or the other activity. So in one way or the other, whichever the methods that the teacher is using, that will be helpful for the students to understand, to comprehend, and to learn successfully. And this can be done through proper lesson planning, and that is possible when you are collecting the material. So when you are collecting the material, see that
Uh,
that material
Madam, one
is
minute.
helpful to
Hello.
all the students. The activities you are selecting will be beneficial to all the students, and that activities or whatever that you are doing in the classroom will make all children happy, right? So, for example, if you find that some students work better in groups, you need to allow that. and include small group activities that where students can participate. It will help those students who prefer learning style and also help students who may not have those social skills to develop. See, when you are allowing the students to work in small group, they develop the ability when they are in small, the ability to speak, to analyze, to understand others' viewpoints, to solve certain problems, develop cooperativeness, develop teamwork, develop confidence, right? Develop tolerance, and develop what we call helpful nature. See, all these types of things, and that also they learn from each other how somebody explains his viewpoints, and they get maybe different viewpoints so that they can understand the different viewpoints which they would not have come across. They don't have that background, they don't have those experiences that would enrich each other. They would enrich each other, help them in developing social skills, that is maybe talking, maybe cooperation, maybe helping, maybe teamwork, right? And all these things are very, very essential. So you need to allow students to work in groups, to work individually, to work in various maybe doing working in fields, or maybe learning by doing, or learning by watching, learning by seeing, learning by hearing. So different ways need to be employed by the teacher in order to teach the different part of the a particular chapter or a lesson. That helps in inclusive teaching. So, as an educator or a teacher, the mission should be to teach the students about a wide variety of concepts, theories, subjects, and cultures. So, how we create this inclusive and well rounded curriculum? So, it can mean teaching about lesser known historical events or unique grammatical nuisances. It can also be as simple as teaching students about diversity, inclusion, and acceptance of perspectives and cultures that are different from others. So, teaching is not just merely limited to teaching a syllabus, not just merely limited to teaching a grammar or teaching a theory, teaching a history, or teaching merely a mathematical formula or a chemistry or maybe a physics. Even teaching acceptance of the cultural differences, acceptance of the other's perspective, acceptance of other languages, acceptance of other people is also a lifelong learning. It can make a enriched human being. It can make them a better human being with a vast knowledge. So our learning should have variety. Teaching should have variety. The material should have variety. The teaching material should have variety for this to happen. So when we talk about the diverse learning, which covers a broad range of abilities, maybe the communities or backgrounds, as well as the learning styles. Now there are modern approaches to accommodate diversity in the classroom, which are shifting from teaching to average student to more inclusive methods that afford equitable learning opportunities for all students. As you know, that on a traditional method, usually it used to be the teacher is considered to be the center of all the process of maybe the whole process of teaching and learning, and the methods of teaching were just teacher oriented in the sense whether a teacher demonstrates, whether a teacher lectures, whether a teacher use chalk and talk, or the teacher uses a textbook, or a teacher shows something. It's all maybe around a teacher, and the students were just passive listeners, and usually it used to be a monologue method. And over a period of time, it was understood that the with a monologue method, maybe with teacher-oriented method, it does not help the student. We do not know whether a student has understood or not until and unless there is an opportunity for a student to ask questions, to give his observations, to clarify, and to speak, and to express, right, and to analyze, and to synthesize, and to agree or to disagree with teachers, right? We do not know whether a student has learned or not. So this gave rise to maybe the monologue, from the monologue method to the dialogue method. The dialogue method, where not only the teacher is active, but also the student is also active, participating his own learning, right? Participating the learning. And from there, we have now, there are modern approaches. We have moved from from the teacher-centered approach to the student-centered approaches. Student-centered approaches where we are putting the student on the pedestal, making a student to learn as per his needs, as per his abilities. It is not that the student is left alone. It is not that the student would learn only in isolation, whereas the teacher would become a facilitator. The teacher would help a student in maybe providing the material, the providing the way to learn, and helping a students to learn what he wants to learn, right? The teacher, more than just teaching, that are just delivering of information, the teacher is acting as a facilitator, helping the student to help, where it saves lot of time on the part of the teacher and the student, only to learn that what is required by the student, rather than teaching everyone like which is been already known to some of the students. So now there are more inclusive methods where there are methods which helps all learning styles, which are more equitable learning opportunities for all students. So teacher needs to use all those methods which help give equal opportunity, learning opportunity for all the students. And here it does not mean that the teacher tailoring lessons to each individual student, but rather exposing all students to a variety of materials, activities, and assessment. It's not that if there are 40 students, there need to be 40 different teaching methods, and each student is learning something in isolation. No, not like that. If there is an auditory style or maybe kinesthetic style or visual style, maybe in a class teaching, the teacher may combine all three uh, methods and all three varieties of materials and activities and assessments methods, where that will help all the students to learn and be very happy, right? And all are exposed to all type of material, all type of activities, all type of assessment, but only a teacher is using it in a combination. And apart from that, there are also a range of technologies nowadays available, which can also provide a useful support for teaching diverse students population, right? Right from the initial engagement for gathering information, for creating the active groups, as well as to for having the adaptive lessons and have the learning flexible e-learning tools. So technology, the wide range of technologies which are available to us, they can be of great support for the teachers in creating the inclusive teaching, inclusive classrooms with the availability of these technologies. Actually, there has to be a separate session for these types of technologies which can help in maybe individual tailoring lessons for individual students, as well as helping the students for group learning or individual learning, as well as for the diverse students population. So in that way, the teacher can have a combination of traditional methods, apart from the range of technological tools mixed together, or methods of teaching mixed together, activities mixed together, assessment methods mixed together, so that it will help in maybe inclusive teaching. Now, when we are talking about diversity in teaching, teaching for diversity refers to acknowledging a range of differences in the classroom. That's also earlier we have said. Range of differences can be anything, as we have said, ethnicity, religion, background, learning, so everything. So teaching for inclusion signifies embracing differences, and teaching for equity allows the differences to transform the way we think, teach, learn, and act. This all earlier I have said. And it also helps in fairness and justice. And when we are talking about diversity and inclusive teaching, we need to have teaching to engage diversity, to include all students, to seek equity as an essential for preparing these adults that I have already spoken. And apart from this, it is very, very important that in a uh, classroom where there is a diversity, that teaching for diversity, inclusion, and equity, these three important aspects are very, very important in a classroom which is having diversity. One is the difference is an essential part of our, this has been, oh, it is, now when we are talking about, if at all, if you want to have tailor your teaching to include all diverse learner. That is called as inclusive teaching. For that, as a classroom teacher, what is that you can do? How do you go about? One is, when you are preparing the teaching material, you need to first think, the first step is that you should examine your teaching material. So what is that you are looking for? So if you are focusing more on teaching diversity in the classroom, you should know that different students learn in a different way, and you should have a curriculum which is inclusive. That means a curriculum which caters to the needs of all the children, and also probably the subjects that will naturally be best fit for refreshed material. So you should have a curriculum. Curriculum includes your syllabus, your co-curricular activities, your maybe value teaching, your attitude teaching, your classroom teaching, right? All these things apart from the syllabus. So your inclusive curriculum should have an opportunity, apart from your academic subjects, all the activities and all type of best fit material. And you should select that type of teaching material where it is not merely just limited only to teaching a syllabus, but also it is what we call it as teaching for life. So it is not merely an only learning of a textbook material, and it is also learning of maybe understanding, tolerating, and right, enriching one's own self. So you should see that, do we have such type of a teaching material which will help in teaching all the diverse groups. And secondly, one should understand the students. Understand the students means understanding the backgrounds of the students. When the school starts, or maybe when you are coming to the school or college or son, it is very important. Nowadays, we call it as ice breaking. You try to understand the student. You try to know like what type of student community has come to you, and one should be very very you mindful while using the word. When you are asking the questions, one should be very very thoughtful. One should, it should, you should ask a question in a very very inoffensive manner, right? When you are talking about individuals socio-economic status, when you are talking about somebody's culture, somebody's religion, somebody's language, and a teacher should be very very thoughtful, and that should be very very inoffensive. And ice breaking, it's not only, it can be between the student and the students and the teacher, it can also among the students. So you should demonstrate your, you should have the initiatives to demonstrate your interest in their culture, in the background, are doing something where the students would open up and feel happy. They develop trust in the teacher, and they say that they should happily say where they come from, how, what their experiences are, and they should come up with their stories, their experiences, and you should celebrate these different experiences, give an opportunity for all the students to express, and make everyone feel valuable, make everyone feel very very unique, and make the students respect each other, that everybody has brought something very unique among themselves. So these, whether the, in order to get to know the student, it is among the students, between the students and the teacher. So you have to have many activities, such type of ice breaking activities which are very very inoffensive, so that you will learn what type of students that you have got. And apart from that, address inequality. So wherever there is a inequality, as you know, inequality, socioeconomic inequality, or maybe the inequality in terms of probably the disability that the students are having, or maybe inequality in terms of maybe the students academic abilities. So whenever they are there, you should take them as real issues and instances, and you should relate to help such students to improve as well as comprehend and understand. So only when you address inequality and you remove the barriers that the students are having, without removing the barriers, it is not possible to achieve a inclusive classroom setup. So it is very essential that students should see the teacher, that the teacher is addressing inequality. Okay. So that is very, very important that when we are talking about. So first, that you are knowing the background of the students. After understanding the background, you need to address the inequality. Then it is also very, very essential that if you want to be very, very successful in a diverse classroom, and if you want to have a inclusive classroom teaching, and it is very essential even to connect with the parents. So you should know the community. You should know the community from where the children are coming, and you should connect to the community to the children's parents. So because the parent and the child is a part of the community, only by when you survey the homes, or when you invite the parents, when you talk to the children as well as parents together, by understanding maybe what the parents care with regard to their children, about their families, about the background, about the experiences that they are having, about the type of cultural background that they are having. And if you can open a dialogue without making the parents feel in again, without making the parents feel offensive or anything, be open and be, and the parents should also feel happy that their interaction with the teachers can be beneficial for their children. So that way, connecting with the parents, maybe understanding much more deeper with regard to the children, and that will help a teacher and understanding the background, and further, like what is the needs and aspirations of the parents and the children. By understanding that, you can create a inclusive teaching setup. Then be a culturally responsive educator. So culturally, without any bias, maybe that bias may be conscious or it may be unconscious. So sometimes we may be unconsciously, we may become prejudiced or biased to some degree. So you should become very, very conscious while dealing with children, or while creating the material, while dealing with our teaching practices, or while assessing the children, like whatever that we have done, whether the environment they have created, whether it is safe for all children, whether it is an inclusive environment, whether all children are feeling safe and happy, free to express without any fear, and free to work, right? Free to be non-discriminated, and that culturally responsive educator one should become, a teacher should become, for creating a inclusive classroom setup, for a inclusive education, for a inclusive teaching. And apart from that, one should also have seek out uh, the professional development opportunities, PD opportunities. Here, I mean to say the professional development opportunities around diversity initiatives. And nowadays, the very program now today conducted by this Mysore University, MMTTC, is a professional development program. It is a professional development program where we are talking about learner diversity, where we are talking about the inclusive education, where we are talking about the inclusive classroom practices, we are talking about inclusive teaching. This itself is a professional development opportunity. So these type of professional development opportunities, it may be workshops, it may be conferences, it may be professional development courses like PDFs, right? Or maybe the orientation programs, maybe the refresher courses in a subject of diversity, that develops the teaching professional development opportunities, where teacher will really, it will help the teacher to start introducing these concepts into the in their own teaching. They become aware of. Sometimes without awareness, it may not be possible for a teacher to handle a diverse group. In now, what is happening, by becoming aware that the students coming from different backgrounds, they are unique, and they come with the differences in culture, ethnicity, gender, or learning abilities, and all that, the teachers, they become very, very careful about their teaching material, assessment, teaching methods, activities, all these things, classroom management, treatment towards the students, right? All these things can develop a inclusive classroom setup, and ultimately helping in achieving a inclusive society, right? And that is what NEP is speaking about, to achieve ultimately a inclusive society. So for this, it is very important that there should be some professional development activities wherein the teachers learn about diversity initiatives, like how they should go about in a classroom. The teacher should be very honest and aware about our own cultural biases. Sometimes, like what happens, it is a self-reflection. Sometimes when you are teaching diversity, inclusivity, one should first assess where you are coming from, where students are coming from. What is my background? What is my ethnicity? What is my culture, my language? Am I treating, or am I treating the students coming from other ethnicity, background, cultural, language, or maybe religion fairly, or in a very, very just manner? Am I biased consciously or unconsciously? So you need to develop your perspective. You need to have your choices. Only then you can help the students to do the same. So probably you must have heard about the concept of self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes we may treat the students, sometimes nowadays such type of practices are not there, whether it is in schools or colleges. Sometimes we used to just brand a student as a fool, not knowing anything, cannot comprehend and does not know anything, right? He comes from such a background, he is a donkey, is that this. What happens? Once the teachers have low expectation from such a student, the child would unconsciously and psychologically starts believing that he is good for nothing, because they believe teachers more than the parents. They believe what teachers they say to be much more, they regard teachers much more rather than their own parents. So if a teacher starts saying like what a student of K incapable or something, they start, they psychologically their morale go down and they start like they become mal adaptive, right? Mal adjustive, and their performances will go down. And then what happens? Whatever the teacher said, that will come true, right? Whether it is a student, whether it is a teacher, and the other group would also say that whatever was teacher was saying is really correct and he is incapable, and that is called as self-fulfilling prophecy. Many a times it may be a wrong self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes we may have misconceptions, we may have a wrong perception. So the teachers should not have such type of self-fulfilling prophecies. Treat all students fairly. See that if a student is not learning, why is he not learning? What is the barrier? And how that can be rectified? The barrier can be removed, so that whether he is being treated fairly in a classroom setup by the teacher and by the other peer group, right? Whether the material that is being taught or given, or the teaching methods or the assessment methods are right or not. So all these type of choices the teachers has to make very honestly and become aware of, right? Then only you can have a inclusive classroom setup. And apart from that, include classroom science in multiple languages. Many a times nowadays we are having these technological tools like Google Translate and all these things. When you are using bulletin boards or maybe signboards, as far as possible, to see that if there are students who are coming from multiple cultures, it would be good to put on notice board maybe some sort of information, or maybe some sort of signboards, or maybe some sort of something, maybe in multiple languages. It's not that the teacher should know every language. That would be good if a teacher is knowing. Nowadays, we are having quick Google translates that may help a teacher to use the right terminology. When you are using it in the classroom, maybe some language, or maybe some sort of maybe a technical word, or maybe if you are putting it on the bulletin boards or maybe signboards, you can also make use of the help of a technology that helps in helping the diverse group. That is can also be a one important strategy the teachers can use in a inclusive team. And you can also invite guest speakers into the classroom. So when we are talking about the inclusive classrooms, it is very important that you can include guest speakers. Guest speakers can be from parents, they can be from community, they can be from celebrities, they can be available, and they can be people who are known in their fields, maybe representing diverse groups, diverse cultures, diverse religions, diverse background, so that you are bringing in security, you are bringing in such type of people into the classrooms, maybe whether school or university, people belonging to multicultural organizations, that will give a classroom, a inclusive teaching. Apart from a classroom teacher, people coming with experts or maybe guest speakers with different backgrounds or maybe expertism, and people with different cultures, religions, that will open up the classroom and that will make them to understand different people, their worth, their achievements and all that. And that way the teacher is also helping in a inclusive classroom setup and in an environment. And you can also, another way, you can also take the students to the field trips to cultural events in the community. Maybe within the community you are having different types of work groups, and you are having different types of religious places, you are having different types of festivals, you are also having different types of setups where the children can go visually watch, see, interact with people, talk to people. You are having multiple number of the NEP speaks about, probably you must be knowing if you have gone through NEP, that right from the primary school, right from the primary level, that the internship should start for the children. There should be a day where it is called as, like, that means the student will not have, it is off books. That means the child will not go to the school, right? The child will not have the books with him. The child will go maybe in his own community. Maybe he may go and sit with somebody who is a carpenter, who is a potter making, who is a flower vendor, or maybe a grocery vendor, or maybe a person doing something, or maybe a person doing some what we call it as a simple repair work, or maybe some sort of electronic work. Somewhere the child should be exposed to these type of experiences, working with multiple number of people, and going out and participating not only in the cultural festivals and all that, and also going to people, sitting with them, learning with them. And this is the type of internship that is being spoken, right, by the NEP 2020 should start from the primary level, where the student, wherever, whichever the type of occupation he is interested, right from his primary school days, they can go and sit with them, and then learn from them. And such type, it is not necessary when you are inviting somebody as guest speakers into your classroom, that you are inviting only some degree holder, or maybe inviting a professor or a teacher or a engineer, doctor. Apart from that, you can invite a local artisan, you can invite a farmer, you can invite a flower making person, a basket making person, a what we call it as carpet making person, or maybe a person who is running a poultry, person who is running a horticulture. And even such people, because of their experience, they are experts in the field. They can also come and they can also talk to the students, interact with the students, need not it have a very, very formal structure, talk to them, right? And you can also take the children to such type of fields and make the children to interact with them, talk to them. Also, you can, teachers can interact with them, and that would help them in understanding the not only cultural events, but also in understanding the different types of the availability of maybe the resources, expertism, the worth of the people's lifestyles, and that can make individuals a better individual. And by developing that multi-ethnicity, you are making not only good citizens, but also making good human beings. And some of the effective teaching strategies to accommodate diverse learning. So we are all hearing when we are discussing about the support for diverse learner. There can be inclusive pedagogy, there can be differentiated instruction, there can be universal design for learning, and other strategies which represent a shift in approach towards providing learning opportunities. Just only you have to have a paradigm shift just from lecturing. You need to move, that you have to have a shift in the approach
WhatsApp
of
ನಿಮಗೆ
teaching as
ಓದೋಸ್
well as
ಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಕಳಿಸಿದ್ದೀನಿ
learning.
ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್.
That would help in students progress, as well as you can also build the profiles for each students. And we can also, we should not make students feel that they are second class citizens, because if the students feel that they are not being included, if they are singled out, and then they feel insecure. And it is also, inclusive teaching is not meant to be resource intensive. It is not just, neither only you are only collecting only lot of teaching resources, or just making each student, giving each single student to learn. No, instead, it should be teaching a variety of ways of learning, exposing all students to a mix of material, activities, and equipments that would help the learner the value of others. Like, they can learn, by hearing, seeing, doing, right? By talking to others, by interacting with others. So that would, the mix of all these can help students to learn from, because no single student will have a single learning style. It can be a mixture of learning style, but one single style will be dominating. So you are
यार
giving
बारह
an opportunity for the students to learn using a multiple learning style. And just I was talking about, in a diverse classrooms, and a learner with a learner diversity. If you want to make your inclusive education successful, your inclusive teaching, if you want a inclusive society, so technology can be of a great support to this diverse student population. And here, probably, maybe how the technology can be used for diverse students population to make inclusive education or inclusive teaching and inclusive society, probably that would require a separate treatment. But still, I would like to touch upon this also, just very, very briefly, maybe in a single slide. Like in a diverse classroom, maybe hearing, or maybe observing, visually watching, and maybe doing. And when the, as you know, senses are, right, senses are the gateways to knowledge. So there can be nothing in the intellect until and unless it goes through our senses. Either we smell it, or we touch it, we taste it, right? Or we see it, or we hear it. So only that messages, that touch, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, and that messages are given to our brain, and the knowledge is stored, that it is hot, it is cold, it is bitter, it is sweet, it is hard, it is soft, okay? And then the foul smell, good smell. So whatever we are storing, and we are assigning that character to that particular thing, and that is a knowledge. And that knowledge we are getting it only through hearing, seeing, touching, that through our senses. So if you want, the more the number of senses are involved, the more accurate our knowledge will be. So only with one sense, if you are only lecturing, some student may not be able to hear properly. There may not be a complete accurate knowledge. Apart from hearing, if a student can also see, a single teacher standing in the classroom, apart from lecturing, cannot do anything. For seeing, a teacher can make use of maybe certain teaching aids, right? And the teacher can make use of some of the technological tools. The teacher can make use of some of the activities. So that way, maximum number of senses are involved, which will help the students in gaining flexibility, as well as in having the variety of materials and activities, which helps the students to increase the engagement, and also increases the enjoyment and motivation of the students. So that way, if you are using maybe the audio records, so visually you are using maybe the PowerPoint, you are using the pictures, you are using the movies, you are using the field trips, you are using demonstrations, you are using experimentations, you are using drama, skit, number of things put together, including all your technological tools, where you are having simulation learning, where you are having three-dimensional learning. There are different ways, different apps are available to the children. And this technology can play a technical role, a very, very important role, key role in helping to reduce the cost, time, and resources required to support and teach diverse students. In many a times, wherein you require a large laboratories in order to teach students to experiment and to demonstrate. So where there are no funds available, where there are no resources available to build such laboratories, maybe virtual laboratories, maybe with the use of technology, you can definitely make the students to have a similar type of experiences, if not first hand, at least by visually, the student would become completely aware of like how that experiment can be conducted. That saves time and cost also, because in a real experiment, if you are using it, sometimes if the specimens are wasted and the time is wasted, you need to wait. But in a simulation, there is no cost and the time is also not required, right? So that way, the virtual laboratories, the virtual activities can also help a teacher in teaching diverse students, where there can also be digitalization, there can be adaptive learning and educational technologies, there can be assistive technologies which can be used to reduce the workload, and you can create resources required for effectively teaching in diverse students population. You can have YouTubes, you can have multiple number of apps are available which are used for teaching different teachers, and different resources are available. UGC is creating a lot of material, NCERT is creating a lot of material. Apart from that, the World Wide Web is giving plenty of this digital material, and lot of educational technologies are also available, and they can be used with, of course, with definitely with great care, what is to be used and what is not to be used, right? That can be used both for teaching as well as for learning. So they can be used building students' educational plans and portfolios, right? The educational technology, and also they can be used for like what we professional development programs, use active and adaptive learning also, which I said there can be different types of active and adaptive. Maybe you know the tools like Adopt, Captivate, which can make it faster and easier to create the personalized and modular customized experiences. And also there are other technologies which can also be used in making the diverse learning very, very helpful. The teachers should make use of, and the teacher should get the multiple way of handling the children, maybe by making use of this type of online test, and maybe questions, or maybe materials from several sources can be utilized by the teachers. Like for example, educational technology, tech, and there are variety of learning games available, video games are available, which can be made use of by the teachers, so that they become more and more customized learning materials for a variety of children. And just like NEP has spoken about, as we are having diversity in the classroom, and that is not limited only to the students, and diversity should also be there when it comes to teachers also. You must have seen, read NEP. They said wherever there is possible, maybe in rural areas, or maybe wherever it is possible, like where there is a women's school, that women teachers need to be employed, or where you are probably having schools in certain areas, as far as possible, maybe the local teachers can also be employed, and they can be taken, so that because empirical studies have said they can identify the children's background, since they come from the same background, and children will also feel very, very secure. If you are in a multiple culture, where in school where there are a diverse type of students, you should also see that the recruitments are done for teachers where the teachers also come from diverse backgrounds, where the students feel that they are also having teachers of similar backgrounds. So the even the students, teachers, diverse background also, teachers also matters, and that should also be taken care of when you are talking about inclusive teaching and inclusive education. It helps in case if you are having diverse teachers group also, helps in improved test scores, improved course grades, improved working memory, better attendance, better interpersonal self-management, higher likelihood of taking an advanced math class, selected gift talented program. See, all these are some of the very, very important promotional, the what we call it as the results the researchers have found. Like if you are having teachers with multiple, or the teachers having different background, just like students. So diversifying the education system is therefore increasing the representative of teachers who belong to different racial, ethnic communities. Students of color deserve to have opportunity to learn from teachers who may share similar cultural experience as them. This is spoken by NEP 2020. All this I have presented, spoken while speaking about diversity, whether it is food, sports, clothes, books, games, toys, that also should represent culture, maybe religion, maybe language, students' backgrounds, even the classrooms. There has to be awareness activities, there has to be diversity lesson plans, and there has to be resources for multiculturalism and diversity, culturally responsive teaching, inclusive classroom network, and professional development in cultural diversity. I have already said that teachers should be trained, there should be workshops, and there should be programs for the teachers so that they become aware and they develop understanding, they should appreciate, and they learn how to handle the diverse classroom. So, of course, in conclusion, I can only say that as a classroom teacher, in order to make our classroom inclusive and to make our teaching inclusive and to make education inclusive and to bring in an inclusive society, it is very, very important that a rich repository of knowledge and experience, not only in case of the teachers understanding the student, but inclusive classroom curriculum, content, teaching practices, right? They all should, like whatever you are having, classroom management, assessment practices, everything should reflect and draw on different socio-cultural perspective so that the students' engagement and their learning journeys can be enhanced.